The sky over the Sahara Desert burned red on the night everything changed. Dr. Sarah Chen stood at the edge of the impact crater, her protective suit doing little against the heat that rose from the massive alien vessel half buried in the sand. The ship was enormous, easily 3 kilometers long, its hull a strange dark metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "We're reading energy signatures from inside," her assistant called out over the radio. "Something's still alive in there." Sarah's heart pounded as she led the team down into the crater. The world had watched in horror just 6 hours earlier, as 2 alien ships had fought in Earth's orbit. The battle lasted only minutes before one vessel fell, burning through the atmosphere like a meteor. The other ship had simply vanished, jumping away through some kind of portal that left the scientists speechless. The entrance to the crashed ship had been torn open by the impact. Sarah stepped through carefully, her flashlight cutting through the darkness. The interior was like nothing she had ever seen. Walls curved in impossible angles, covered with symbols that glowed faintly. The air smelled of ozone and something sweet she couldn't identify. "Contact!" someone shouted. "I've got a life form, second corridor to the right." They found the alien captain in what appeared to be the bridge. The creature was massive, easily 3 meters tall, with forearms and skin that shifted between blue and purple. It was dying, that much was clear. Strange blue liquid pooled beneath its body, and its breathing came in wet, labored gasps. Sarah approached slowly, her translation device held out. The alien's large eyes focused on her, and to her amazement, it spoke. The device crackled, and then words came through in broken English. "You are the humans?" "Yes," Sarah said, kneeling beside the creature. "We want to help you." The alien made a sound that might have been laughter. "Too late for me, but maybe not for you." It reached out with one of its 4 arms, pressing something into Sarah's hand. A small device, smooth and warm. Data core. "Everything you need to know. About us, about them." "Them?" Sarah asked. "Who attacked you?" "The Krell Dominion." The alien's voice grew weaker. "They have conquered thousands of worlds. They see all other life as resources, tools, fuel." Its eyes dimmed slightly. "We tried to fight. The Vorentine Collective, we were strong once. But the Krell are infinite." Sarah felt cold despite the heat. "Are they coming here?" "Already coming. They tracked my ship. They know about Earth now." The captain's breathing became more difficult. 5 years. Maybe less. "They will harvest your world. Your people, everything. How do we fight them?" Sarah asked desperately. The alien's hand gripped hers with surprising strength. "Learn from my ship. Take everything. The weapons, the shields, the engines. We failed, but maybe you humans have something we didn't." Its voice dropped to a whisper. "Survivors are always more dangerous than conquerors expect." The captain died then, its body going still, the glow fading from its skin. Sarah stood there in shock, the data core heavy in her hand. Around her, the team stood silent, processing what they had just heard. Colonel Marcus Torres arrived 12 hours later with a full military escort. He was a tall man with gray at his temples, his uniform marked with ribbons from Earth's last major war. He found Sarah in the makeshift laboratory they had set up outside the ship. "Tell me everything," he said without preamble. Sarah handed him a tablet, showing the preliminary scans. "The technology is centuries beyond us, maybe more. Their power source alone could revolutionize everything we know about energy. The weapon," she shook her head. "The weapons could turn cities into glass. And these Krell are coming for us? In 5 years, according to the captain. They're an empire, Colonel. They've conquered thousands of worlds." Torres looked at the alien ship, his jaw tight. "Then we have 5 years to learn everything we can from this wreck." The United Nations called an emergency session the next day. For the first time in decades, the world's governments put aside their differences. The threat was too large, too immediate for politics as usual. They established the Global Defense Initiative, pooling resources and knowledge in a way that would have seemed impossible just days before. Sarah was put in charge of the research division. She had the best scientists from every nation, working in massive underground facilities built specifically for this purpose. The alien data core had been partially decoded, revealing schematics and information that made the scientists both excited and terrified. The Vorentine technology operated on principles that bent the laws of physics as humans understood them. Their shields worked by creating harmonic frequencies that redirected energy. Their weapons contained miniature black holes, controlled through quantum manipulation. Their engines folded space itself, making faster-than-light travel possible. It's like trying to understand calculus when you've only just learned to count, one engineer complained during a briefing. Every answer creates 10 new questions, but they kept trying. They had to. Every day brought them closer to the deadline. Torres oversaw the military integration. He was skeptical of alien technology, preferring the reliability of human weapons. But even he had to admit that conventional arms would be useless against what was coming. He watched as engineers tried to recreate the alien weapons, failing more often than succeeding. The problem is efficiency, Jin Park explained during one meeting. She was a young engineer from Korea, brilliant but unorthodox in her thinking. We're trying to copy their technology exactly, but we don't have their manufacturing capabilities, their materials, their understanding. So what do? Torres asked. We stop trying to be them, Jin said. We take their technology and make it ours. Combine it with human engineering. We might not match their elegance, but we can match their effectiveness. It was a radical idea, but they had no choice. They began to build hybrid systems, mixing Vorantine technology with human redundancy and over-engineering. Where the aliens used one power source, humans would use 3. Where alien ships had elegant, efficient designs, human vessels would be brutal and practical. 6 months after the crash, they had their first working prototype of a Vorantine shield generator. It was 10 times larger than the alien original and required a nuclear reactor to power it, but it worked. Sarah stood in the testing facility watching the shield shimmer into existence. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. This was just the beginning. Torres joined her, his expression grim. 5 years, he said. Think we can make it? Sarah thought about the dying alien captain, about the warning it had given them. She thought about the thousands of worlds that had fallen to the Krell. Then she looked at the shield, at the teams of humans working day and night to save their species. We have to, she said simply. The clock was ticking, and humanity's crash course in alien warfare had only just begun. They were scavengers picking through the bones of a fallen civilization, trying to learn the secrets of war from those who had already lost. But humans had one advantage the Krell might not expect. They were survivors, and survivors never fought fair. Breaking the laws of physics, 2 years had passed since the Vorantine ship crashed in the Sahara. The underground facility known as Site Alpha had grown into a massive complex, stretching kilometers beneath the Nevada desert. Sarah Chen walked through corridors filled with humanity's brightest minds, all working toward the same impossible goal. The main laboratory was the size of an aircraft hangar. In the center sat what looked like a piece of alien technology, but Sarah knew better. It was humanity's first successful hybrid reactor, combining Vorantine energy principles with human engineering. It was ugly, covered in cables and cooling systems, but it worked. That was all that mattered. We've achieved stable output for 72 hours, Dr. James Wright reported, his eyes red from lack of sleep. The containment field is holding, and we're generating enough power to run a small city. Sarah nodded, making notes on her tablet. And the failure rate? James hesitated. Still about 1 in 5. Sometimes the quantum cascade collapses, and we get a surge that melts the housing. 1 in 5 is better than 1 in 3, Sarah said. We're improving. Across the facility, Jin Park was having better luck with weapons systems. She had stopped trying to recreate the elegant Vorantine singularity cannons, and instead focused on something humans could actually build. The result was crude but devastating. Watch this, Jin said, pulling up a video from the testing range in Australia. The screen showed a massive gun, easily 20 meters long, mounted on a reinforced platform. When it fired, the air itself seemed to tear apart. The target, an old battleship placed 5 kilometers away, simply ceased to exist. No explosion, no debris. It was there one moment and gone the next. Colonel Torres watched with a mixture of awe and concern. How does it work? We can't create a stable micro-singularity like the Vorantines did, Jin explained. But we can create an unstable one and throw it at the enemy before it collapses. The singularity forms, exists for maybe half a second, and takes everything nearby with it when it fails. It's messy and uses 10 times more power than it should, but it works. Messy I can work with, Torres said. How many can we build? That's the problem. Each one requires components we can barely manufacture. Maybe 50 if we dedicate every resource to it. Torres frowned. 50 guns won't be enough if the Krell come with thousands of ships. Then we don't just use these, Jin said. She pulled up another design. We build hybrid weapons. Combine the singularity cannons with railguns, missiles, nuclear warheads. Layer our defenses. When one system fails, 3 others take over. It was the philosophy that had guided all their work. Humanity couldn't match alien elegance, but they could build redundancy into everything. They could over-engineer, overpower, and outlast. The shield technology presented different challenges. Sarah's team had successfully recreated the harmonic field generators, but powering them was another matter entirely. The Vorentine shields could run for days on a compact power source. Human versions needed massive reactors and still failed after a few hours. We're missing something fundamental, Sarah told her team during a late-night session. The Vorentines understood something about quantum harmonics that we don't. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a physicist from Japan, looked up from her work. What if we're thinking about this wrong? The Vorentines used precise frequencies to redirect energy. We can't match that precision, so what if we use broader frequencies? Cover more range but with less efficiency? That would require even more power, someone objected. So we give it more power, Yuki said. We have the reactors. Use 3 generators instead of 1. Create overlapping shield harmonics. It won't be elegant, but it might work. They tested the theory a week later. The new shield system was massive, requiring a platform the size of a building to hold all the generators and power sources. But when they activated it and fired a railgun at full power, the shield held. The energy was dispersed, sent harmlessly into space. It's working, Sarah breathed, hardly believing it. It's actually working. But success in the laboratory was only the first step. Torres was tasked with figuring out how to put all this technology into something that could actually fight. He gathered the best military engineers and strategists from around the world. The Vorentines built ships like works of art, Torres told his team. Elegant, efficient, beautiful. We're not going to do that. We're going to build warships that can take a beating and keep fighting. I want redundancy in every system. I want backup systems for the backup systems. I want these ships to be ugly, brutal, and absolutely unstoppable. The design that emerged was unlike anything humanity had built before. They called it the Titan-class dreadnought. It was enormous, 3 kilometers of weapons, armor, and reactors. The hull was layered with both Vorentine energy-dispersing plating and traditional ablative armor. If the shields failed, the armor would take over. If the armor was breached, internal bulkheads would seal. The weapons were equally redundant. 6 singularity cannons ran down the spine of the ship, backed up by dozens of railguns and missile tubes. If the alien technology failed, human weapons would continue the fight. Torres even insisted on including nuclear warheads as a last resort. You're building a monster, Admiral Zhang said when she saw the plans. She commanded the Chinese fleet and was one of Torres's most valuable advisors. I'm building something that won't die easily, Torres corrected. The Krell will have superior technology. They'll have faster ships, better weapons, more experience. But they won't have determination. They won't have the will to keep fighting when everything is falling apart. That's what we need to survive. The first Titan, named the UNSS Defiance, began construction in orbital shipyards above Earth. It took 18 months to build, with thousands of workers laboring day and night. Sarah visited the construction site regularly, marveling at what humanity had achieved in such a short time. 3 years ago, we didn't know there was life beyond Earth, she said to Torres as they watched welding crews attach another armor plate. Now we're building warships to fight an interstellar empire, and we're running out of time, Torres replied. His expression was grim. Long-range sensors are picking up anomalies near the edge of the solar system. The Krell might be conducting reconnaissance. Sarah felt her stomach tighten. They still had so much work to do. 6 Titans were under construction, but they had hoped for 20. The weapons were still unreliable. The shields still failed too often. They needed more time. How long do we have? She asked. Torres was quiet for a moment. Best guess? 2 years. Maybe less. 2 years to perfect technology they barely understood. 2 years to build enough ships to face an empire that had conquered thousands of worlds. 2 years to train crews for a type of warfare that had never been fought before. In the laboratories, the work continued at a frantic pace. Every day brought new discoveries and new failures. They learned to combine Vorentine and human technology in ways neither species had imagined. They built weapons that shouldn't work but did. They created shields that broke every rule of efficiency but held strong. Jin Park barely slept anymore. She moved from project to project, solving problems through sheer determination and unconventional thinking. When traditional approaches failed, she tried things no Vorentine engineer would have considered. She mixed technologies that shouldn't be compatible. She overpowered systems until they worked through brute force rather than elegance. "You're going to burn yourself out," Sarah warned her. Jin just smiled, exhausted but determined. "I'll rest when the Krell are gone." It was the attitude that defined humanity's entire effort. They were racing against time, against impossible odds, against an enemy they had never seen but knew was coming. They were taking scraps of alien technology and forging them into weapons of war. They were doing the impossible because the alternative was extinction. As the second year drew to a close, the Defiance was finally complete. It hung in orbit, a massive testament to human ingenuity and desperation. It was ugly, bristling with weapons and covered in mismatched armor plating. It looked like exactly what it was, something built by scavengers from the wreckage of a better ship. But Torres stood on the bridge of the Defiance and smiled. It might not be pretty, but it was theirs, and it was ready to fight. The sensors showed the anomalies were getting closer. The Krell were coming and humanity would be waiting. Colonel Marcus Torres stood on the bridge of the UNSS Defiance, staring at the view screen that showed Earth slowly rotating below. The bridge was cramped, filled with consoles and displays that covered every surface. It wasn't the clean, elegant design of a Vorentine ship. It was purely functional, built for war, and it showed. "All systems are green, Colonel," Lieutenant Sarah Kim reported from the weapons station. "Singularity cannons are charged and stable. Railguns are loaded. Missile tubes are hot." Torres nodded, his hands gripping the command chair. In 3 years, humanity had gone from discovering alien life to building warships capable of destroying planets. The Defiance was the first and largest of the Titan-class dreadnoughts, but 5 others were nearing completion. The Indomitable, the Relentless, the Thunderchild, the Phoenix, and the Vengeance all hung in various stages of construction in orbit. "Run the simulation again," Torres ordered. "Combat Scenario 7, the crew groaned. They had run Scenario 7 a dozen times already, and it always ended badly. In the simulation, the Defiance faced 3 Krell cruisers. The AI controlling the enemy ships was based on data from the Vorentine ship, showing how the Krell fought. They were fast, coordinated, and ruthless. The simulation began. The enemy ships appeared on the screen, moving with a grace that made the Defiance look like a lumbering giant. They opened fire immediately, beams of energy that could boil away metal lancing toward the human ship. "Shields up," Torres commanded. The harmonic shields flickered to life, dispersing the energy. But the Krell adapted quickly, adjusting their frequencies to penetrate. Warning lights flashed across the bridge as shield strength dropped rapidly. "Rotating shield frequencies," Kim called out, reinforcing with secondary generators. That was the human advantage. Where the Vorentines had relied on precise, efficient shields, the Defiance had 6 separate shield systems, each capable of running independently. When one failed, others took over. It was wasteful and required massive power, but it worked. The Defiance returned fire. The singularity cannons fired, creating tiers in space that reached for the enemy ships. But the Krell were quick, dodging with movements no human ship could match. One shot clipped a cruiser, and the alien ship shuddered but kept fighting. "They're too fast," the helmsman muttered. "We can't hit them." Torres watched the battle unfold with calculating eyes. The Krell were superior in speed and maneuverability. They danced around the Defiance, hitting it from multiple angles. The shields were failing and the armor was taking damage. In a few more minutes, the simulation would end in humanity's defeat. "Stop trying to match their speed," Torres said suddenly. "We can't outfly them, so we don't try. Full power to forward shields. All weapons spread pattern. Make them come to us." The crew executed his orders. The Defiance stopped trying to maneuver and instead became a fortress, bristling with weapons firing in all directions. The railguns created a wall of projectiles. The missiles spread out in a wide net, and when the Krell ships moved in to exploit what looked like immobility, the singularity cannons were waiting. One enemy ship flew directly into a singularity and vanished. The other 2 adapted, trying to stay at range, but the Defiance's weapons kept them at bay. It wasn't elegant. The human ship took heavy damage, losing shields and armor, but it survived and the simulated enemy eventually ran out of energy. "Simulation complete," the computer announced. "Marginal human victory." The bridge was silent for a moment. Then someone started clapping and others joined in. They had finally beaten Scenario 7. Torres allowed himself a small smile. "Again," he ordered. "I want us to do it faster next time." Down in engineering, Chief Engineer Robert Chen was having his own struggles. The hybrid reactors were powerful but temperamental. They had a habit of overheating at the worst times, and the quantum containment field sometimes fluctuated without warning. "We need better cooling," he told his team. "The Vorentine systems are too efficient. They didn't need this much heat management." "We could add more radiators," someone suggested. "Add them," Robert agreed. "Add everything. I want backup systems for the backup systems. If one reactor fails, 5 others should be able to take the load." It was the philosophy that guided all of humanity's efforts. They couldn't match alien precision, so they built in redundancy. They over-engineered everything until failure became almost impossible. The Defiance had 7 reactors when one would have been enough for a Vorentine ship. It had cooling systems on top of cooling systems. Every critical component had at least 3 backups. Dr. Sarah Chen visited the ship regularly, checking on how her designs were holding up. She found Torres in the observation deck staring at Earth. "Having doubts?" she asked, joining him. Torres shook his head. "Just thinking about what we're asking these crews to do. Most of them are volunteers. They know they might not come back." "They know what's at stake," Sarah said. "We all do." Torres turned to face her. "Will it be enough? 6 ships against an empire?" Sarah was quiet for a moment. She thought about the thousands of worlds the Krell had conquered, about the Vorentine collective that had fallen despite their superior technology. Then she thought about the Defiance, about the jury-rigged systems that somehow worked, about the human crews who refused to accept defeat. "The Vorentines tried to match the Krell with elegance and efficiency," she said. "They lost. We're trying something different. We're building ugly, brutal ships that refuse to die. Maybe that's what it takes." The warning came 3 weeks later. Long-range sensors detected ships entering the solar system near Pluto. They were small, fast, and heading toward Earth. The Krell Vanguard had arrived. Torres ordered the Defiance to launch immediately. The Indomitable and Relentless were complete enough to join them. 3 Titans against an unknown number of enemy ships. It wasn't ideal, but it was all they had. "All hands to battle stations," Torres announced over the ship-wide intercom. "This is not a drill. The enemy is here." The crew moved with practiced efficiency, taking their positions. They had trained for this moment for months, running simulation after simulation. But everyone knew this would be different. This time the enemy would shoot back with real weapons. This time people would die. The 3 Titans moved out from Earth orbit, accelerating toward the enemy. The Krell ships were detected near Neptune, a small fleet of about 20 vessels. They were smaller than the Titans, but faster and more maneuverable. "It's a scouting force," Admiral Zhang said over the communication channel. She commanded the Indomitable. "They're testing our defenses." "Then let's show them what we've got," Captain Maria Rodriguez of the Relentless replied. Torres studied the tactical display. The Krell ships were moving in perfect formation, coordinated in a way that suggested either a hive mind or extremely advanced communication. They would reach Neptune's orbit in 6 hours, putting them in range of the Titans. "We can't let them get past us," Torres said. "If they reach Earth, millions will die before we can stop them. We hold the line here." The crew of the Defiance prepared for battle. Engineers made final checks on all systems. Weapons crews loaded every gun and armed every missile. Medical teams prepared for casualties. Everyone knew that in a few hours they would either be heroes or statistics. Jin Park was aboard the Defiance, overseeing the weapon systems she had designed. She moved from station to station, making minor adjustments and encouraging the crews. These weapons were her children, built from scraps of alien technology and human determination. "Will they work?" a young weapons officer asked her nervously. Jin smiled. "They'll work. They might not be pretty and they might not be efficient, but they'll work. That's what we do. We take broken things and make them fight." As the Titans approached Neptune, the Krell fleet finally became visible on the screens. The alien ships were sleek and black, moving through space like predatory fish. They were beautiful in a terrifying way, and they vastly outnumbered the human ships. Torres took a deep breath, his hand resting on the command console. This was it. Everything they had worked for came down to this moment. 3 human ships built from salvaged alien technology, crewed by people who had never fought a space battle before. against an enemy that had conquered thousands of worlds. All ships, Torres transmitted. Remember your training. We're not trying to be graceful. We're not trying to be efficient. We're just trying to survive. Hit them hard, hit them often, and don't stop until they're all dead or we are. The Krell ships opened fire first, beams of energy crossing the distance between the fleets. The battle for humanity's survival had begun, and there was no turning back now. The first Krell energy beam struck the Defiance's shields with the force of a nuclear explosion. The bridge shook violently, displays flickering as power surged through the systems. Colonel Torres gripped his command chair, his knuckles white. Shields holding at 70%, Lieutenant Kim reported, her voice steady despite the chaos. Rotating frequencies to compensate. Torres watched the tactical display as 20 Krell ships closed in on the 3 human titans. The enemy moved with predatory grace, their black hulls reflecting the distant light of the sun. They fired in perfect coordination, focusing their beams on single targets before switching to another. "They're trying to overwhelm our shields," Admiral Zhang transmitted from the Indomitable. Classic Krell doctrine. They'll focus fire until one ship falls, then move to the next. "Then we don't let them focus," Torres replied. He turned to his helmsman. "Evasive pattern Delta. Keep us moving. Weapons, return fire. All cannons, spread pattern." The Defiance lurched forward, its massive bulk moving faster than physics should allow thanks to the Vorentine engines. It wasn't graceful, but it was effective. The Singularity cannons fired, creating tiers in space that reached out toward the enemy ships. The Krell were fast, dodging most of the shots with ease. But one ship wasn't quick enough. A Singularity caught its wing, and the alien vessel seemed to fold in on itself before disappearing completely. The other Krell ships scattered, reorganizing their formation. "First blood to us," Captain Rodriguez cheered from the Relentless. Her ship was smaller than the other 2 Titans, built more for speed than pure firepower. She used that advantage now, darting between enemy ships and firing railguns in rapid succession. But the Krell adapted quickly. They split into 3 groups, each targeting one of the human ships. Torres watched as 6 enemy vessels closed in on the Defiance, their weapons blazing. The shields flared bright blue, dispersing energy, but the strain was showing. "Shield strength at 40%, Kim reported. "Power fluctuations in Generator 3. "Switch to backup generators," Torres ordered. "Engineering, I need those shields stable." In the engine room, Chief Chen was already moving. "Redirecting power from secondary systems," he called out. "Shields will hold, but we're running hot. The reactors are at 90% capacity." Another barrage of enemy fire struck the Defiance. This time, one beam penetrated the shield, striking the hull directly. The ship shuddered as armor vaporized, but the multiple layers held. Where a Vorentine ship might have been crippled by such a hit, the human vessel kept fighting. "Hull breach on Deck 7, Damage Control reported. "Sealing bulkheads." "Casualties reported." Torres felt each casualty like a physical blow, but he couldn't afford to dwell on it. "Keep firing. All weapons, continuous barrage. Make them pay for every meter they get closer." The Defiance became a fortress of destruction. Railguns fired nonstop, sending tungsten slugs at a significant fraction of light speed. Missiles streaked out in waves, forcing the Krell ships to dodge and weave. And when targets presented themselves, the Singularity cannons erased them from existence. 2 more Krell ships fell, but the cost was high. The Relentless took heavy damage, losing 2 of its 3 reactors. The Indomitable's shields failed completely, forcing it to rely solely on armor. And the Defiance was bleeding from a dozen wounds, atmosphere venting from multiple hull breaches. "Torres, my ship is crippled," Rodriguez transmitted, her voice strained. "I've lost main power and half my weapons are offline." "Fall back to defensive position," Torres ordered. "We'll cover you." The Defiance moved to shield the damaged Relentless, taking fire meant for the smaller ship. The enemy beams hammered against shields that were barely holding, each hit bringing them closer to failure. Torres knew they couldn't keep this up much longer. "Jin," he called to the weapons engineer. "Tell me you have something." Jin Park had been working frantically at her station, running calculations and checking systems. "The Singularity cannons are overheating. If we push them any harder, they'll explode, but..." She paused, her fingers flying across her console. "What if that's not a bad thing?" Torres didn't like the sound of that. "Explain." "We set the cannons to overload, then launch them at the enemy. They become bombs, creating singularities that collapse catastrophically, It'll destroy the weapon systems, but it might take several enemy ships with it. It was insane. It was wasteful. It was exactly the kind of desperate tactic that no Vorentine commander would ever consider. Torres smiled grimly. Do it. Target the largest concentration of enemy ships. The Defiance's forward singularity cannons began to glow with dangerous energy, their containment fields deliberately destabilized. Warning klaxons blared throughout the ship as the weapons reached critical levels. Firing solution locked, Kim reported. Launching in 3, 2, 1, now. The overloaded cannons separated from the ship, propelled by conventional rockets toward the enemy formation. The Krell ships tried to shoot them down, but the weapons were small and moving fast. When they reached their targets, the singularities collapsed. The result was spectacular and terrifying. Space itself seemed to tear apart, creating whirlpools of destruction that pulled in everything nearby. 5 Krell ships were caught in the blast, crushed by forces that twisted matter and energy together. When the singularities finally collapsed completely, there was nothing left but debris. The surviving Krell ships hesitated, their perfect formation broken. It was the first time they had shown anything resembling fear. Torres seized the opportunity. All ships, full assault! Hit them while they're disorganized. The 3 Titans surged forward, even the damaged Relentless contributing what fire it could. The Indomitable, its shields gone but its weapons still functional, became a brawler, closing to point-blank range and unleashing everything it had. Admiral Zhang's ship took terrible damage, but it fought like a cornered animal. The Defiance fired its remaining weapons in a continuous barrage. Railguns overheated and were replaced by backups. Missile tubes ran dry and were manually reloaded by damage control teams. When conventional weapons failed, the crew improvised, using the ship's engines to superheat debris and launch it at the enemy. The battle raged for hours. Both sides took heavy losses. The Krell lost ship after ship to humanity's brutal, inelegant tactics, but they inflicted terrible damage in return. The Relentless was barely holding together, kept functional only by the desperate efforts of its crew. The Indomitable had lost over half its hull plating, exposing critical systems, and the Defiance was a wreck, held together by bulkheads and sheer determination. But slowly, impossibly, the human ships were winning. The Krell formation continued to fall apart. Their coordinated attacks became desperate individual strikes, and one by one their ships fell to human weapons. The last Krell vessel tried to flee, its engines burning bright as it attempted to reach the edge of the system. The Defiance, battered and broken, gave chase. Torres knew they couldn't let any enemy escape. The Krell couldn't be allowed to report back about humanity's capabilities. 1 missile left, Kim reported. Single nuclear warhead. Fire it, Torres ordered. The missile streaked across space, pursued by the fleeing Krell ship's point defense systems. They shot down the warhead, but the nuclear explosion was close enough. The electromagnetic pulse fried the alien ship's systems, leaving it dead in space. The Defiance limped up alongside it and finished the job with railguns. Then it was over. The Battle of Neptune was won, but the cost had been terrible. The Relentless was barely spaceworthy, needing to be towed back to Earth for repairs. The Indomitable had lost 40% of its crew and would require months of work to be battle-ready again. And the Defiance was in only slightly better shape. Torres surveyed the damage from what remained of his bridge. Panels sparked where they had been hit by feedback from weapon strikes. The deck was scarred with burns and debris. Medical teams were still pulling casualties from damaged sections. All ships, status report, he requested tiredly. The reports came in one by one. 53 dead on the Defiance, 78 on the Indomitable, 31 on the Relentless. Every name was someone who had volunteered to defend Earth, someone who had trained alongside their crewmates, someone who would never see home again. But they had won. Against an enemy that had conquered thousands of worlds, humanity had achieved its first victory. The Krell Vanguard was destroyed, every ship accounted for. Earth was safe, at least for now. Colonel Torres, Admiral Zhang's weary voice came over the communication channel. We did it. We actually did it. Torres nodded, though she couldn't see him. We survived, Admiral. But this was just a scouting force. The real Krell fleet is still out there. Sarah Chen's voice joined the channel from Earth. We detected your victory. The entire planet is celebrating. You're all heroes. Torres looked at the casualty reports on his display. We're survivors, Doctor. Nothing more. And we need to survive a lot longer before this is over. He was right. The Battle of Neptune was just the beginning. The Krell now knew that Earth could fight back, but they also knew humanity's tactics and capabilities. The next battle would be even harder. But as Torres looked at his battered ship and his exhausted crew, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. They had taken scraps of alien technology and beaten a force that 6 months after the Battle of Neptune. Admiral Marcus Torres stood in the orbital shipyard above Earth, watching the construction of the new Titan II-class dreadnoughts. The yard had expanded dramatically, with thousands of workers operating in zero gravity, assembling ships that shouldn't exist. The original 3 Titans had been repaired and upgraded with lessons learned from that desperate battle. But these new ships were something else entirely. They incorporated not just Vorentine technology, but Krell systems salvaged from the destroyed Vanguard fleet. Humanity had become scavengers of the highest order, taking every piece of alien tech they could find and making it their own. "They're beautiful," Dr. Sarah Chen said, floating beside him in the observation window. Torres smiled slightly. The ships were anything but beautiful by conventional standards. They were massive, irregular shapes bristling with weapons of a dozen different types. Some sections were sleek Vorentine design, others were bulky Krell armor plating, and still more were purely human engineering. They looked like they had been assembled from spare parts by someone who didn't care about aesthetics. "They're monsters," Torres corrected. "But there are monsters." The new Titans were faster than the originals, using hybrid Vorentine Krell engines that could tear through space at speeds that made physicists weep. Their shields combined 3 different technologies, creating overlapping fields that were nearly impossible to penetrate. And their weapons were a nightmare of redundancy and overkill. Jin Park had outdone herself. Each Titan II carried singularity cannons, plasma beams, railguns, missile batteries, and even experimental graviton projectors that could crush enemy ships like tin cans. If one weapon system failed, 5 others would keep firing. It was wasteful, inefficient, and absolutely deadly. "How many are we building?" Sarah asked. 30, Torres replied. "With the 3 original Titans upgraded, that gives us 33 capital ships, plus support vessels, fighters, and defense platforms around Earth, Mars, and the Moon." It was an impressive force, built in just 3.5 years from a standing start. But both Torres and Sarah knew it might not be enough. The Krell Dominion had thousands of ships, perhaps tens of thousands. They had conquered worlds with centuries of spacefaring experience. They had weapons and tactics humanity was still trying to understand. "Long-range sensors detected the main fleet 2 weeks ago," Torres said quietly. "They're coming. Best estimate is 3 months until they reach Earth." Sarah felt her stomach tighten.
"How many ships?"
"At least 2,000 that we can count. Probably more hiding in their formation. 2,000 ships against 33. The odds were worse than David versus Goliath. But humanity had one advantage the Krell didn't expect. They had learned to think differently, to fight in ways no civilized galactic empire would consider. In the months since Neptune, humanity had prepared for total war. Every person on Earth knew what was coming. Children trained in evacuation procedures. Cities built massive underground shelters. The entire planet's industry had been converted to military production. Humanity was transforming from a peaceful species into something the galaxy had rarely seen. A civilization willing to do absolutely anything to survive. Captain Maria Rodriguez had recovered from her injuries at Neptune and now commanded the Titan II-class dreadnought Retribution. She walked through her ship's corridors, checking preparations. The crew was a mix of veterans from the first battle and new recruits who had trained on the captured Krell vessels. "We're ready, Captain," her executive officer reported. "All systems are operational. The new weapons are tested and calibrated. We can launch within the hour." Rodriguez nodded. She had lost good people at Neptune. The memory of watching her ship being torn apart, of ordering damage control teams into sections she knew they couldn't survive, still haunted her dreams, but it had also hardened her resolve. The Krell wanted to harvest Earth. They would find that humans didn't die quietly. Admiral Zhang commanded the Indomitable, now rebuilt and upgraded beyond recognition. Her ship had new Krell-derived armor that could regenerate when damaged, using some kind of organic-mechanical hybrid technology that scientists barely understood. It was creepy, watching metal flow like liquid to seal breaches, but it worked. "The Krell think they know us now," Zhang told her officers during a briefing. "They saw us fight at Neptune. They think they understand our tactics. But we've evolved since then. We've learned from them, adapted their technology and mixed it with our own. They're going to face something they've never encountered before. As the deadline approached, the human fleet assembled near Mars. 33 Titan-class dreadnoughts, each one unique, each one a testament to humanity's refusal to accept defeat. Around them gathered hundreds of smaller vessels, frigates, destroyers, cruisers, all built with the same philosophy of redundancy and hybrid technology. Torres stood on the bridge of the Defiance, which now served as the fleet's flagship. The ship had been so heavily modified that little of the original remained. It was faster, stronger, and more deadly than ever before, but what made Torres most proud was its crew. Veterans of Neptune mixed with fresh recruits, all working together with the precision of a machine. "Fleet status?" he asked. "All ships report ready," his new tactical officer replied. The position had been filled after Lieutenant Kim died at Neptune, a loss that Torres felt keenly. "We have 33 capital ships, 214 support vessels, and over 5,000 fighter craft. Total crew complement 93,000. 93,000 people who were about to face an empire." Torres thought about the Vorentine captain who had died in the desert, warning humanity about the Krell. That alien had believed humanity had something different, something that might let them succeed where the Vorentines failed. "What do we have that they don't?" Torres had asked Sarah once. "We're survivors," she had replied. "We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day. We competed with other species, fought each other, barely survived ice ages and disasters. We learned to adapt or die. The Krell conquered other worlds, but I wonder if anyone ever really fought back the way we can." The Krell fleet appeared on long-range sensors exactly when predicted. They came out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system, a massive armada that blotted out the stars. 2,000 ships in perfect formation, moving with mechanical precision toward Earth. Torres watched them come, feeling the weight of his species' survival on his shoulders. This was it, the moment everything had been building toward. Win and humanity would survive. Lose and Earth would become another harvested world, its people either dead or enslaved. "All ships," Torres transmitted across the fleet. "Remember Neptune. Remember what we learned. The Krell are faster, more experienced, and more numerous, but we have something they don't. We have the will to keep fighting when everything falls apart. We have the ability to adapt, to improvise, to take their own technology and use it against them. We're not trying to be civilized. We're not trying to fight fair. We're trying to survive. And that makes us more dangerous than they can imagine." The Krell fleet entered weapons range and immediately opened fire. Thousands of energy beams lanced across space toward the human ships. But the Titans were ready. Shields flared to life, layered defenses that dispersed and absorbed the attacks. The formation held, weathering the storm of fire. "Return fire," Torres ordered calmly. "All weapons, full barrage. Show them what we've learned." The human fleet erupted with weapons fire. Singularity cannons created tears in space. Plasma beams superheated enemy hulls. Railguns launched projectiles at relativistic speeds. Missiles filled the space between the fleets with explosions. And the new graviton projectors reached out with invisible hands, crushing Krell ships like insects. But the Krell had learned too. They adapted to the singularity cannons, avoiding the tears in space. They adjusted their shields to deflect the plasma beams. They shot down missiles with point defense systems. For every Krell ship that fell, they destroyed a human vessel in return. The battle spread across millions of kilometers. Ships dueled at ranges that made Earth's previous wars look like knife fights. The Titans took terrible damage but kept fighting, their redundant systems allowing them to continue even when half destroyed. When shields failed, armor held. When weapons were destroyed, backups activated. When reactors were damaged, others took the load. Rodriguez's retribution lost its entire port side, atmosphere venting from dozens of breaches. But the ship's organic armor began to seal the wounds even as the crew continued fighting. Zhang's Indomitable was struck by a weapon that should have vaporized it, but the hybrid shields dispersed enough energy for the ship to survive, if barely. And Torres's Defiance became the center of the battle, drawing fire from dozens of enemy ships while coordinating the human fleet's response. The bridge was chaos, displays sparking, systems failing and being replaced by backups, but Torres remained calm, directing his ships like a conductor leading an orchestra of destruction. "They're pushing toward Earth," his tactical officer reported.